Hi, good day. Welcome again.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of According to MzShellz. We're here again to talk about something that got near and dear to my heart most recently. Well, actually, more than 2 years ago, it became more of something I needed to pay attention to. And I'm going to give you a little backstory so you all know, and maybe if you don't, I lost my mother earlier this year, and I have talked about it and talked about the grieving process and so on. However, before we got to that stage, the fact that as a family we had to sit down and have a discussion about power of attorney, if something should happen, what's the next step or process, what does the end of life's plans look like and stuff like that. And I remember this conversation was happening when we had her not being she was sick, and it was a situation where we realized, okay, this is her diagnosis. She had dementia, but the doctor was walking us through the process of what could happen with her dementia. And we listened to what she had to say, and as a family, we had our discussions. Luckily, she and dad had already had certain things in play, but no, we were like, okay, no, we have to hit green light on some of the things so that we stay on top. So it was a really surreal discussion, some moments of pain, some moments of unbelief, disbelief. But I thought eventually, once I got over the hump, I'd bring my friend back because I discovered she does this whole genre of work, and have discussions with you guys so that you're not at that stage where you are just talking about it at that instant. As I said, luckily my parents had already had discussions because daddy could say, okay, she had said this. And then there was this one moment when she was clear in her mind and she clearly stated certain things about her funeral and certain things that she wanted, and we audio taped it, we documented it, and we stick to her final wishes. So it's a conversation that's not easy to take it from me. It wasn't an easy conversation, and we were having our discussions as a family and stuff, but it was something that was necessary. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pull the gloves off. We're going to have to look at within our situations, including myself personally, and have discussions with our families about this topic that we're going to be talking about. And I brought my friend Angeline Rhodes. I'm sure you remember her. She was here the last time with her lovely husband, Mr. Tim Rhodes. So she's a personal and business financial coach from the Push Financial Group, and she's going to be talking to us about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and all those fancy living trust and living wills and all those different names they have out there. As I've been really researching it, so I'm happy that I have a friend who's in the business that can share some nuggets with us. And take your pen and paper out. And she also educates, and if you can do business with her on the other in terms of buying the products and whatever, doing the different things that you need to do. So she'll tell us all about it. So take out your notes. If you need to press play, pause, call your friends, tell them about it, share this video, tell them about her, and let's keep the whole end of life situation, and in the case of a big emergency, let's keep it clear as to who is in charge of what, who does what. Because trust me, I'm telling you, the emotions that come around those events is can be so blurry. You need one person whose head is going to be on their body. And so, without any further ado, put your hands together and welcome back my guest, Angeline Rhodes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always nice hanging out with you.
What did you say?
Thank you for this opportunity. It's always nice hanging out with you.
Yes, I know. I'm the best. Thank you for coming and taking the time out to sharing with us. And as I told everybody, I had to have my own discussions about it. But I think even prior to that, years ago, when I was living in Texas, the church was a part of that. Was the first time I've ever heard about these words. I knew about the will, I knew about insurance, the whole thing about power of attorney, and there's another one where the person is in charge of you're alive, but the medical, like something happened to you, you have to be like maybe unconscious for a moment, and there's a decision that needs to be made. That person,
They
I don't
call
know
them
the
living
title for that
surrogate.
one. What?
Living surrogate. That's the person who was in charge of you
Right,
while
right, right. So that person takes over like as a little administrator in the interim, because you may be out of it, you're in a coma, and something needs to be happening and stuff. So they had people coming in and talking to us, and I was sitting in this room and I'm like, wow, I will. Huh. I mean, I knew I will, but I never had to really personally think about it. I was sitting in the room and it was lawyers walking them through, and a lot of people jotting things down and talking on their phone, and I'm sitting there, I don't know what time to do. But I was happy to be in the room because it brought me aware that, okay, as young as I am, I need to really be aware of it. So I appreciate at the time the persons at that church who brought those people in. But I didn't do anything with it, but at least it put me in my headspace that, okay, I need to focus on that. And then the whole situation with mommy and stuff, so brought me full upfront to like, okay, you need to, for your even own personal self, focus on that. So
right.
yes, talk to us, tell us, give us the different meanings of the different one. The one you just mentioned, the surrogates, whatever, the power of attorney,
So
the living trust, the living wills. There's all different ones. Tell us all about them and what's the difference between
okay.
each.
So a trust, actually let me do trust last because that one is kind of a baby for me. It's gonna take a little bit longer to explain.
Sure.
So a will, a final will. So there's living will and then there's final will. A final will is a written request that you have specifically stating who you want to leave what to. I want the house to go to this person. I want the car to go to this person. And you make a list of even other assets you have, whether you have jewelry, maybe something special. Like with my uncle, that was how I actually got into knowing even what a will was. When my uncle was sick, that was one of the things I did with him, even before coming into the financial industry. I did a will with him, and I told him to write down in his will. I wanted his Bible because I was so fascinated with it. He had one of those Bibles that had the concordance in the back. It was just so cool. I thought it was so cool. So I had him write that down, and he had very specific requests about what he wanted to happen when he died, how he wanted to be buried, where he wanted to be buried, those kind of things. So a will would be just specific instructions for someone to carry out. The person who you want to carry out is called the executor. So the executor would be the person who you would also list an executor, a backup executor. So two people that you would want to actually move forward. The executor is the primary. The backup executor is really the secondary one. Is really if something happens to the executor before you, then they carry this out. So that's simpler will. A will can be something that you can just write down on a regular piece of paper and have it notarized. It can just be a sheet of paper, depending on where you're from. You don't even have to get it notarized. It's just a list of wishes. I'm in my sound mind, and when I pass, this is what I want to happen. You need to find out what works best for you, because a will doesn't work the best everywhere. Like I live in Florida right now, and I would not suggest anybody to get a will in Florida, because the way the will is done here, it goes into what we call probate, and that's normal for anywhere. The problem though is probate in Florida takes 2 years. Some places it doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long. So just imagine if someone passes away here and they leave a house for someone, that person has to pay the mortgage for 2 years before they even find out if they're really going to get a house.
Wow.
And also when you go through that process with a will, through the probate process, you cannot go before the judge on your own. You have to hire an attorney. And attorneys don't work on, they work on retainers when it comes to wills here. So they can start at $10,000 just to retain you. And yeah, so it gets very expensive very quickly, depending on where you are. Now, I'm just saying this for where I am. There are other places that wills are perfect. It doesn't take that long for them to go through the process. It might even take 60 to 90 days for them to just walk through with the executor for everybody to get their possession. So just be very conscious of what works where you are. In Jamaica, a will is what works. They don't have trust and stuff like that in the most of the Caribbean islands. So a will would be the best option. And that's something that my mom did years ago. I had her make sure she write down everything that she wanted to do and all of that. And she got it notarized and gave, a copy to us so that we know exactly what our wishes are.
Mhm.
That's a final will. A living will is a little bit different. Most of the time when you go to the hospital, they'll ask you if you have a will. They're actually talking about a living will. The living will works while you are alive. And the living will is more of a health protection, where if someone goes into maybe coma and the hospital needs to make decisions, then a living will tells them who they want to be the person to make that decision for them. I want this person to do this. I want this person to do that. Again, my uncle had one of those. My sister and I were both on it. And one of the things that was on his was do not resuscitate.
Yeah, mommy had that too.
Right.
Mommy had that
So
too.
we knew that. So we were able to carry out his wishes in regards to his health care when he got sick. And that's what a living will is. The person cannot make the choice by themselves because they're physically or mentally unable to do so. And then the person who is assigned to the living will now steps in and go, yeah, I want to pull the plug. No, I don't want to pull the plug. Yeah, go ahead and have the surgery, because they cannot speak on their own. So that's the living will. Okay. You mentioned power of attorney, and I want to make this very clear. A power of attorney works along with a living will. For a lot of us, we have older family members. They started to get dementia, or mentally they're just not able to make decisions that they would normally make on their own. A power of attorney is the document that is necessary to be signed. The document is signed. The person says, I want this person to be my voice. I want this person to make my decision for me. And this goes hand in hand with the living will, in addition to other things, financial stuff. Another thing that we had with my uncle when he had gotten sick, we did power of attorney, both me and my sister. So we were able to do stuff like change the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy. We were able to open his bank account for him, stuff like that he would normally do on his own that he cannot do. So the power of attorney now becomes the document that says this person has authority to make decisions on my behalf. I want you to note this though. The power of attorney dies with the person. And this is something most people don't know.
Dies
When the
with
person passes away, the voice stops. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. That document is no longer legal. It's only legal when the person is alive.
Oh, so
Once
they
they
know that's
die,
when the will kick in.
correct. So that's when the executor's voice starts, once that person passes away. So just understand that so that we can make sure that we have all our documents in place. And again, I didn't learn that until my uncle passed.
Wow.
But so we were like, okay, we want this to be with this final remains, and we couldn't make those decisions because the power of attorney was no longer anything.
Oh, so then there was somebody else who was the executor for the will.
Correct. In addition to that, so let's go to trust, because that's one of the things that you asked me about.
Mhm.
Trust works very good where I live, because trust is, it's one of those. Let me explain to you in really simple terms. Okay, trust is like it's like having a safe. You buy a safe. You put all of your important stuff in it, your house, your car. You can put anything you want in there. You can even put your trust as a beneficiary for your life insurance.
Mhm.
My husband and I actually have done that because we have smaller kids. And I would suggest that if you have smaller kids, make sure you get a living will and just find out whether a trust or a will works where you are, and then make sure that that is in place. A will goes along with a trust. So if you ask an estate attorney to set up a trust for you, you will also get a will and a living will with the package. That's normally how they come. So you're completely covered. But a trust is like buying a safe, putting everything that you want to have distributed into the safe and giving someone else the combination. That's kind of the way it is. A trust works while you are alive, and it transitions to when you pass. And that means that people hear your voice while they are alive, and when you pass away, your voice still continues through the person who you put in charge of your estate. The one thing I want to tell you about the difference between a trust and a will is very, very easy to do. Like I said, you can just pretty much fill out a piece of paper and have somebody's, you can have it notarized, or you can just fill it out and sign it, and it's valid depending on where you are. A trust is a little bit more expensive to do, but it's cheaper on the back end. So let's say, for instance, my uncle had a trust. If he had a trust, then the property would immediately pass to my mom. Everything would immediately pass to everyone. It wouldn't go through the court system at all. There would be no need for attorney or judge.
So he was in Florida? He was in Florida when he had it?
Yes, he was in Florida when he passed. So everything would automatically go to everyone without an attorney, without anything. It's just like him standing there going, I want this person to have this, I want this person to have this. And that's the way a trust works. It is a little bit more expensive to set up. When we did ours, it cost us $500 between me and my husband. But the reason why we did it that way was because, again, we have smaller kids. And I'm speaking to these people who have smaller children who are under the age of 18. If you have kids under the age of 18, then a trust is beneficial to leave if you want your assets managed properly. And the reason I'm saying that is because of this. If something happens to you, your children are going to go somewhere, okay? It can be to a family member. One of my coaches always said, make sure that you have a trust or a will, because usually if you don't, the state has one for you, and they usually send your children to the
men ask you about the states too, because
yes, because the state steps in. The state steps in the process of the will. They do. The state steps in, and this is any state. You have to file the will with the county that that person lived in before anything can happen. So, and the weird thing is, if you have younger kids, everybody got a crazy uncle, okay? Everybody. And the crazy uncle is usually the one with the most money. Well, they're going to give your children to that crazy uncle that they don't want to live with, okay? But that's if you do not have a will and a trust in place. So you put the trust in place, and trust can be extremely specific, to the point where you say, I don't want you to sell the house. I want you to rent the house out, and I want you to use the money from the house to put aside for the education for my kids. You can do that with a trust. Be very specific. You can even put in there all of these assets, your retirement. You can put your trust as a beneficiary for your retirement. You can put your trust as a beneficiary for life insurance. You can put your trust as a beneficiary for any instrument that you have. Your trust can even own your house. Okay, just so you know that. So if something were to happen to you, because your trust is like a person, and it's the only one out of those that's like a person acting on your behalf. The trust is like a person. When anybody wants to do anything, they have to go through the trustee in order to get access to anything. The trustee does not own the trust. The trustee controls the trust. So the trustee can say, no, according to the person's wishes, I'm not allowed to do that. You sure you don't want to sell the house? No, I can't do that, because the trust says that that's not what the trust, the person who owned the house, the property wants. They want the house rented, and they want the proceeds to go to their kids in a specific order. When they're 20, they get $10,000. If they're married before they're 30 years old, they can get another gift. Don't give them any more money until they get 65 and they're retired. Then you give them 20% of whatever it is. You can be very specific with a trust. And FYI, that's usually how wealthy people leave their estates.
Yeah, I was just gonna give some examples to like the Rockefellers and
yes.
I'm sure that I think Chase Morgan was a family. I know they're the bank, and even Chick-fil-A, even it's a restaurant. When you hear the backstory, it's like a working trust where they promise to keep the business in the family. And how I've listened to interviews with the main face, how he has transitioned the ownership to one of his sons, and how the whole thing, they sit as a family and discuss on a regular basis the entire work. So that's like a trust in work, in
That
like
is a trust.
everyday
Yes,
working before us.
yes.
Literally.
And the trust, the amazing thing about a trust is once it's in place, it starts working. And it can continue for years. Walt Disney had a trust. And that's again how Walt Disney Corporation was able to survive because none of his kids were working with him. None of his
Yeah.
kids were part of his organization, but he left each of them a certain amount of money. The biggest difference between a trust and a will is you cannot dispute a trust, but you can dispute a will. So if you're, if someone is like scared, like their family members are going to want to come after their money if they leave anything for anybody, the family member is going to want to come after it. A trust would be the best way to go because once a trust is in place, it doesn't matter what they do. It's not going to change the standards of the trust. A will, you can dispute. A trust, you can't dispute.
Right.
Right.
And that's what the judges get you to play
Right.
and try and be prophets
Yeah.
and prophetesses.
Yeah. So one of the other things I want to talk about really quickly, and this is something that a couple of my clients do, and then we can get to the rest of the questions you have, Shelly. There is so let me say this. Most people don't see the need to have a will or a trust. And I'm just going to say those two things because the other stuff, we can kind of work around. If you have anything at all, I don't care if it's just your retirement, I don't care if it's just your home, find a way to leave it for someone. Right now, Shelly, we're actually in court. And this has been happening since 2015 over a property that my grandfather gave to my mom and my dad. And we're still actively going through court with that because my grandfather left a will, but he wasn't specific in who got what. And because of that, now we're in court concerning that.
And the judge have to know,
right,
discern what he meant. Okay.
Correct. You'd be surprised the things that happens after a person passes away. And one of the things that you don't want to do is to leave your family in a mess. I see families broken up every day over stuff because everybody wants their stuff. So be very clear at what you want. And you might not have a whole lot. Like I have a couple of clients who all they have is a house. I have a house, I want to leave it to my son. That's it. They have no retirement savings because with the retirement savings, you can just put them down as beneficiary. You don't have to do a will or a trust for that. You can just put them as beneficiary for the life insurance as well. Mm-hmm. The money goes directly to them. Nobody else can claim it. Okay. So even if you don't have a will or a trust, make sure you have beneficiaries on everything. Put beneficiaries on your bank account. The bank gets the money if there's not a beneficiary on your bank account. Just know that. So make sure you have beneficiaries on your bank accounts so that they can just go walk in, take the money out of your account and close it, okay, if they're not joint on the account. The same thing for your life insurance. I always suggest to my clients, but at least two, because if one person passes away, then you have a backup person that money goes to. I also suggest do not put your kids under 18 as primary beneficiaries on your life insurance policy because the insurance companies do not pay money out to minors, okay? It goes into a trust until they're 21 and then they get the money. So this happened actually to someone that I know. She died and her son was 10 and he was the only person on the life insurance. Her family still had to do fish fry to bury her, even though she had a life insurance policy, because the insurance company is not obligated to pay anybody but the beneficiary, and her son was a minor. So he doesn't have access to that until 21.
What happened to the money?
The money sits in a trust until he's 21 years old.
Oh.
Now imagine this. If he dies before 21, nobody gets that. Okay, and this is why you have to make sure you have it right. Normally, when my clients tell me I want my kids on there, I usually have them put a portion of it to their kids and then put another portion to an adult. That way, if they pass away while the kids are still minors, then the other person can still at least get some money to do final arrangements and to raise their kids until they get to the age of consent where they can actually get the money. So it's just ways around doing that. Just be very careful. Others, I'll suggest to them, look, if you have someone who you know is going to be guardian for your kids, if something happens to you, leave the money to them and put the kids as backup. Then when your kids turn 18, then you can always change that, because you can change beneficiaries as often as you want to. It's completely up to you. You don't have to do it once. The same thing with retirement savings, okay? I have a client right now who her mom had money in retirement and she can't get access to it because she wasn't the one as a beneficiary on there. Her mother had no beneficiary. Make sure you put beneficiaries on your retirement accounts.
You have to have that in court. Is that no in court being fought, or?
Now, usually it goes towards the estate of the person if there's no beneficiary, which means that it goes through probate, which means for you to get it, you got to hire a lawyer. And again, I just told you how much they start at, okay? And they're not giving you any information. They're not going to tell you how much money is there, right? So you don't know if you pay $20,000, $30,000 to a lawyer, if you will get $100,000, because you're not getting any information, because your name is not listed. Just make sure all of those things are in order. So let's just say, for instance, that, you know, there are listeners that you have, they have like a couple of my clients, they have a house and maybe just a retirement or a life insurance policy. They put the beneficiaries on the life insurance and the retirement, right? But all they have left is a house. What you can do instead of doing a will or a trust is you can do what we call a quit claim deed. That is when it's a document that you file with the county that the house is in. And with this quit claim deed, it really says, I want this person to get the house. They're responsible for the taxes of the house if I'm unable to pay. What happens now is, if this person passes away, by law, the county can accept taxes from the person on the quit claim deed, and the person can keep the house. Now, if you have a mortgage, it might not work out doing it if there is a mortgage on the home because of this. Most mortgage companies are not going to give over the mortgage to someone else. Just understand that. It is a lot more, it's best in their best interest to take the house, sell the house, and put another 30-year mortgage on it. They're not going to give it to someone and then they only pay 15 years and own the house. So you have to have a will in place or a trust in place to pass the house on to someone else if it has a mortgage on it. What I usually suggest to my clients is just get a life insurance policy, put the person as a beneficiary, let them pay the house off, and they'll own the house. It's a lot easier that way. Okay? If you do it that way, then they won't have to go through the will, the trust, all of that. You can just get a life insurance policy for the mortgage, make the person the beneficiary. Once you pass away, the person pays off the mortgage with the money that you leave, and then they own the house. And but you will still have to do the quit claim deed so the county knows that they're the rightful owner of the house, if you want to do it that way. And I have a couple of clients that's what they've done because they don't have a lot of assets. But I do encourage everyone to do this as quickly as possible. Do not wait. As long as you have assets, make sure you start putting them in place, because what's going to happen, Shelly, is it's going to get too late and they're not going to do it. And you can't do anything after the person gets sick. Especially if they're not in that frame of mind. All you're thinking about is that you want them to get better, right?
Right.
Just a quick story, and then you can ask me the other question. The reason why I knew about a lot of this stuff before I started in the industry was because my uncle, I went to New York to move him because he had gotten sick. We heard when that he had gotten sick. He's not married, he was divorced, he has no children. And my family sent me to go to New York to find out what was going on with him. 2 days of being in New York, I realized he couldn't live on his own. We had to move him. I packed him up in 5 days. Okay, 15 years of this man's life in 5 days. Moved him, and on the way to the airport, he had a stroke. On the way to the airport, he had a stroke. And Shelly, when I tell you, I would never wish this on my worst enemy, because we were in the middle of nowhere. The gentleman who was taking us, a very good friend of the family, was taking us to the airport, had to stop and walk for the ambulance just to find us, with me in the car, shaking my uncle with every ounce of strength I had, praying on the top of my lungs that he was going to live, because I knew nothing about him. I knew nothing about what he had. I saw a bunch of life insurance policies and I packed them up and took them with me, trying to figure out what is what. I knew nothing about him. Thank God he survived. And came through really good too, with all of his faculties intact. After years, he started having dementia as a result of it. But once that happened, I started figuring out what to do. I made him sit down and do a will. I made him sign the power of attorney so we could make the decisions for him because I felt like I had absolutely no control in that situation. We have to be very careful we don't put our families in that situation because I'm going to tell you the truth, as much as they love you right now, they ain't going to love you after that.
Yeah.
They'll love you after that. And it is tough,
yeah.
you know,
And
to
then
go
back to what you were saying earlier about the state getting in. Let's look at Prince. The whole story about Prince. That was what made me turn on my eyes. That I mean, like when we're in Jamaica, I know that it goes to like the country takes it over, whatever. But here in the US, different states have different things, and I think with Minnesota, I think that's where he was. They had a really high death tax, and I think they held on to something because he had no will or no trust and all. There was a lot of drama around.
It is.
Why he left. Could you speak on the death tax? Well, I know it varies from state to state because I think our last president buried his loved one on a golf course to alleviate some made like he found a way to finesse the New Jersey death tax, I think, and buried the person on the golf course to pay death taxes. I'm not talking rumors, it's public information.
No, I know. Taxes, you know what, Shelly, taxes is one of those things, and debt is one of those things that usually surface when someone dies. Just FYI, if the person dies, the debt dies with them. Apart from the mortgage, which the company probably won't give to you, and that's why they won't give the house to you if the person passes and you don't have those things in place. It's because when the person dies, the debt dies with them. I want to make this very clear because most people have people coming after their loved ones when they die saying they owe me this, you're required to pay. You're not required to pay anything. The debt dies with the person.
No, so man, the word death tax, isn't there something called a death? DEATH tax. That the state, that's the one I was referring to.
Yeah, there's some states that have that. It depends on the state that has that. And then there are taxes that have to be paid, of course, with other stuff that they own, you know. So again, that's the reason why you want an executive, somebody who can take care of that stuff for you. You don't want to leave it up to chance because as sure as night follow day, you're gonna have 5 different people saying 5 different things. And it's just gonna be a mess. Yeah.
Okay. So the death tax is something that's paid in every state or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's state specific.
Oh, so I think that was a through that made that bell go ding 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 ding. As I said, with Prince, it was a big thing because he had no will and all his music, all his stuff on that mansion. The state was just gonna come swoop down and take it.
He paid millions of dollars in taxes too. It was interesting.
His people did that. His family had to do that.
Well, they take it from the estate. So they liquidate the estate and then they pay the attorneys and then they pay the government and like that.
Oh, wow. So I like how you were able to navigate through the different ones. What's the best? Well, you answered that question already. The best time is now to start those processes. How can persons connect with you? Because I just said I was telling them earlier that you do the coaching and then you help them navigate through the actual process afterwards. So could you walk us through like that process? How can we connect with you and so that person can actually start implementing some of these things?
I have a direct number that they can call. It comes directly to my business line. It's 407-720-9571. Again, that's 407-720-9571. That's my direct line. I am on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube under Angeline Financial Serenity Coach. So you can connect with me at any one of those things.
All right. And when it relates to you remember you talked about this thing about the surrogate? Is that in the whole living will thing too?
Yes. So that the person who makes the decision for you would be the person who they call. Yeah.
The surrogate.
It's just a name that they gave to them.
Another name.
Yeah.
Okay, because that was the first time I was hearing it too. So I as I said, because of how you nicely put it, all my questions got rolled into one, and I appreciate you coming in and talking to persons. So, guys, it's important. Put your final thoughts together while you have your faculties together. Be very specific, right? And get it notarized, depending on your state. You have to figure out if a will is more relevant for you or a trust. And what your there was a story where back to beneficiaries. Listened to I follow this lawyer who talks about it too, because as I said, as educating herself, and she shared a story of a case where the man died. He was divorced. So people who divorced, listen up. He had one wife, the first wife, as a beneficiary. He got divorced, and I guess life happened. He forgot to change the beneficiary. He got married again. When he died, everything went to the first wife.
Mhm.
So talk about that. How would somebody navigate around that? Do you
Then
know? I know you're not a lawyer, but how would someone?
after everything, after the person dies, there's really nothing you can do. And that's just the end. That's the
It's
reason
just left to the
why.
person's conscience.
Correct. The one thing I will say is, I'm not saying this just because I'm a financial professional, get someone to help you. I do annual reviews with my clients. I'm actually going through some right now where I'm going through their whatever it is that they told me they want to do. We're reviewing it, making sure that they are on track. If there's stuff that they haven't implemented yet, we're going to make sure that we go revisit those so they can put in place. That keeps you on track. That actually happened with something my uncle had, because if you live in New York, you might get pension from New York depending on where you work. And he was getting benefits before he passed away from New York. We were able to change the documents for that to make sure that it came to him for his living expenses under the power of attorney document. But we didn't know that there was something else that he was supposed to get from New York. Well, lo and behold, after he passed, we found out that it was still in his ex-wife's name. His ex-wife was still the beneficiary. They had been divorced over 15 years at that point. And there was nothing we could do about it because he said that he wanted it to go to her initially, and it was never changed. Beneficiaries can be changed at any point in time. So I would suggest that people revisit their documents, and having a financial professional keeps you accountable to do that. Because if it's somebody like me who is very thorough, they will make sure that you check. I do that with my clients, and they'll call me. And that's why the coaching part of what I do, I love so much, because once I tell them, they remember. And they'll call me and go, Angeline, I think I want to change the person who I'm on my beneficiary. I'm like, okay, let's get the document done, get you to sign it, and we'll send it into the company. And it's as simple as that. It could be somebody passes away, like a husband and a wife. The wife passes away. The wife was the beneficiary on the husband's policy. Now you got to change it.
Right.
Right? Because now you have no beneficiary. And that's why I always suggest that you do two, one primary and one backup. Okay? So that you can get through it. And don't listen, do not leave it to chance. Your family loves you. And they really don't want to clean up your mess when you're gone. I'm just being honest with you. Because for my uncle, the transition was smooth when he passed. Because all of these things were in place. Everything. Let me mention this, Shelley, just before we wrap up here really quickly. For those of you who have older family members, especially those who might be going through the dementia stages, or maybe they're going on hospice or whatever the situation is, you can actually do what we call a pre-arrangement with a funeral home for them. We did this with my uncle. Again, all of this happened because of the stroke he had going to the hospital. And this was, again, before I even went into the financial industry. I found out about all of this stuff. We did a pre-arrangement for him. We took him to a funeral home. We talked to them about what he wanted. He was sitting right there telling them, I want to be shipped back to Jamaica when I passed. I want this, I want that, right? He told them everything he wanted, and we had them put a package together for him. We made a down payment on the package because he had a life insurance. That was going to take care of it once he passed. But we did a down payment on the package. And when we did that, it locked in the cost for his funeral that day.
Right, because prices would have gone up.
Right. Funeral expenses go up at least $2,000 or more a year, every year. So it was locked in. When he went into a nursing home, we were able to cash out one of his life insurance policies. We paid off that prearrangement, like completely. It was paid off. So when he passed, they came and picked him up from the nursing home, got him ready. Everything was already taken care of. I just went and checked on him when they put his suit on before they shipped him. Everything was in place. We didn't have to be running around doing all of this stuff that most people do.
And can I say, from personal experience, we didn't do a pre-arrangement. We knew enough what we wanted to do. And as I said, it helped, even especially in the US where everything is so fast. Because I was telling somebody a few days before the funeral, I actually had a meltdown. I'm like, I'm not even ready. I'm not even come to the terms that my mom is dead and we are ready to bury her. But we're able to put things in place as quickly as we did because we had already had previous discussions. So know that when she eventually passed, they would have to know press go again and sit down and finalize everything. It was a sweet situation. I was just walking around like a zombie, but
it was
present. I wanted to be there, but it was really emotional. But again, because certain things were in place, it was easily seamless, and you know. So I like that idea though, with the pre-arrangement. Again, you knew he already had a pre-existing situation.
Right. And you can do that with anybody. I have family members, they have no children. And they've done it. I mean, they're in their 40s, but they did it because they know that they don't want to put that pressure on their family when they pass. And they know what they want. So they put all of that stuff in place before. It's not a taboo. Just do what you're supposed to do so that your loved ones can properly grieve you, because it is harder to grieve when you have to take care of business. It does take longer.
Trust me.
It does take longer, but it makes it a lot. I was able to healthily grieve for my uncle because we had like 4 different funerals for him, to tell the truth. There was one in New York, one in Florida. There was like 2 in Florida. There was one in Jamaica. So, you know, we were able to do all of these things to really come together as a family, as friends, and grieve his loss, because we didn't have to do all the other stuff. Right. Because everything was already in place. But Shelly, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on here and share with you.
And I mean, as I said, this is a topic that became near and dear to my heart. And thank you so much, guys. Guys, there's somebody who needs this information. So let me see the share arrow going up. Let me see my analytics tell me that this video has been shared. Please like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come and check out the information.